There are moments in relationships where words don't come to you as simple questions. They come as emotional tests. When someone with avoidant tendencies circles back into your life, they rarely say what they truly mean. They won't ask, "Do you still love me?" or "Can we fix this?" The avoidant mind is too afraid of rejection, too afraid of being exposed, and too afraid of intimacy to ever be that direct. So instead, they ask questions that seem harmless, casual, innocent. But every question is a subtle attempt to pull you back into the emotional pattern that once kept you tied to them. And if you listen closely, you will notice the manipulation hidden behind the softness of their voice. The first question they ask sounds like curiosity, but it is actually fear. Are you seeing anyone? What they really mean is, do I still have space in your mind? This is not about caring for your happiness. It's about checking whether they still possess the invisible thread that once connected you to them. They want reassurance without having to give anything in return. The second question seems reflective. Do you ever think about us? But this is not nostalgia. It is a quiet attempt to pull you back into the emotional past. They want you to reopen the door they closed. They want you to feel the ache they avoided feeling themselves. They want you to do the emotional labor so they don't have to. The third question comes wrapped in softness, almost like concern. Did I really hurt you that much? This is not accountability. This is a trap, because if you downplay your pain, if you say, "It wasn't that bad," they take it as permission to come back without changing a single thing. They aren't asking about your wounds. They are asking whether the door is still unlocked. Then there is the fourth question, disguised as longing. Why did we stop talking? They know why. They have always known why. This question is meant to rewrite the story so they don't have to face their own avoidance. They want you to shoulder the responsibility for the emotional breakdown that they triggered. It is a rewriting of history meant to pull you back into emotional confusion. And the fifth question is the most manipulative of all. Do you ever miss me? Because here, they are not asking about your feelings. They are asking about their power. They want to know if your heart still bends toward them. They want confirmation that even from a distance, even after disappearing, even after withholding love, they still have the ability to stir your soul. These 5 questions are not love. They are not growth. They are not emotional maturity. They are the avoidance way of keeping you in their orbit without ever stepping fully into yours. You must remember this. Someone who truly wants you does not test your wounds. Someone who truly chooses you does not return only to measure their relevance. Someone who is ready does not speak in riddles. When these questions appear, pause. Do not answer with emotion. Do not fill the silence with explanations. Do not shrink your boundaries to make space for someone who never made space for you. These questions are not invitations. They are warnings. And the moment you see them for what they are, you reclaim the emotional power you once gave away. Because the right person for you will never ask questions designed to confuse your heart. They will ask questions that bring peace, clarity, and truth. And that difference is everything. When an avoidant asks you whether you are seeing anyone, it rarely comes from genuine curiosity or a desire to support your happiness. Instead, this question emerges from a deeper, more complex emotional mechanism inside them, one rooted in fear, insecurity, and the need to maintain a sense of control without committing to closeness. Avoidants struggle with intimacy because intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability threatens their sense of safety. They pull close enough to feel valued, but far enough to avoid emotional exposure. This tension shapes the way they approach relationships, especially after distance has been created. So when they ask if you are seeing someone, they are not checking on your well-being. They are checking their position in your emotional world. Avoidants are uncomfortable expressing desire directly because expressing desire means acknowledging how much they care, and caring means opening themselves to rejection. Their nervous system is trained to stay detached, even when their heart wants otherwise. Asking you directly whether you still have feelings for them or whether you're willing to reconnect would make them feel emotionally naked. Instead, they disguise their fears behind a seemingly casual question. They want to know whether you have moved on, but not because they wish you joy. They want reassurance that your attachment to them remains intact. Your availability feeds their sense of safety, even if they have no intention of offering you the love or consistency you once needed from them. The question becomes a subtle test, one designed to measure how much emotional access they still have to you. If you reveal that you are not seeing anyone, the avoidant feels momentarily reassured. In their inner world, this means you are still an option, still emotionally tied to them, still affected by their absence. This gives them a quiet confidence, a sense of control without requiring them to change anything about themselves. They want to know that even from a distance, even after pulling away, they remain significant enough to influence your emotional decisions. The avoidant mind thrives on the idea that you are emotionally available to them, even if they are not emotionally available to you. If your answer suggests that you might be moving forward, they feel something unexpected, not jealousy, but loss of control. Their sense of emotional equilibrium is interrupted. Avoidants often detach because they fear being consumed, rejected, or overwhelmed. But they also depend on knowing that they could return to you if they ever wanted to, on their terms, at their pace, without pressure. When they sense that your life may no longer revolve around them, they experience a quiet internal panic, one they rarely show on the surface. Instead, they become more curious, more present, more observant, trying to decode whether your new connections threaten their unspoken claim on your emotional world. This is why the question often arrives at specific moments, when you've pulled back, when you've grown distant, or when they feel your energy slipping away. An avoidant can feel when the emotional bond they relied on begins to weaken, even if you haven't said a word. They sense the shift in your tone, your silence, your absence. Suddenly, they worry that the door they took for granted might not stay open forever. So they ask whether you are seeing someone as a way to re-anchor themselves in your life, to pull you back into emotional awareness of them without openly saying they want you back. The question also allows them to gather information without giving any. It is safe for them. They keep their intentions hidden while drawing out your vulnerability. If you admit that you still feel alone or that you haven't moved on, they receive the reassurance they craved without having to offer clarity or commitment. It resets the dynamic in their favor. You become emotionally exposed while they remain emotionally guarded. This is why the question is a form of manipulation, not because they are consciously trying to hurt you, but because they are trying to soothe their own fears at the expense of your emotional stability. They want the comfort of knowing you still care, but not the responsibility of reciprocating that care. They want to keep one foot in your life while keeping the other firmly out of reach. The question serves their emotional ambivalence perfectly. They get to feel wanted without having to want you in return in a meaningful, stable way. They get to feel connected without creating connection. They get to feel safe without making you feel secure. And this is the silent cost of answering that question. When an avoidant starts asking questions that seem reflective or sentimental, they often appear harmless at first glance. But beneath that softness lies a deeper intention, to pull you back into the emotional rhythm that once kept you bonded to them. Avoidants don't usually come back with emotional responsibility, clarity, or genuine apologies. Instead, they come back with subtle curiosity. They use indirect questions to tap into the emotional history you shared, not because they want to rebuild something healthy, but because they want to reactivate a connection that benefits them. This is where the manipulation begins, not through aggression or pressure, but through a gentle attempt to stir old feelings that once made you emotionally available to them. When they ask whether you ever think about the past, miss the connection, or wonder what might have been, these questions serve one purpose: to reawaken the emotional dependency that once gave them power. Touching your memories is their way of reaching your heart without having to open theirs. They know that your bond wasn't built on surface-level attraction. It was built on emotional depth, on moments that meant something to you, on the vulnerability you offered freely. Avoidants remember this even if they don't speak it out loud. And they know that nostalgia is one of the easiest ways to pull someone back into a connection, especially someone who once felt deeply. Avoidants do not tolerate emotional intensity well, but they rely heavily on emotional access. They want to know that they can reach you even from a distance. Asking questions about the past allows them to test whether your heart is still open without risking their own emotional comfort. Instead of saying, "I miss you," they ask, "Do you ever think about us?" Instead of saying, "I regret losing you," they ask, "Do you ever wonder what went wrong?" These questions feel like emotional invitations, but in reality, they are probes. They are gathering data about how much of your emotional world they still occupy, data about how quickly you would let them back in, data about whether you still feel the ache they once triggered. If you respond with emotional honesty, if you admit that you do think about the past or that certain memories still affect you, the avoidant receives exactly what they want: reassurance. But this reassurance rarely motivates them to change or repair the relationship. Instead, it soothes their anxiety while keeping them emotionally distant. Your vulnerability becomes their comfort, and their ambiguity becomes your confusion. This cycle is what keeps so many people stuck, feeling responsible for keeping the connection alive while the avoidant contributes very little in return. Their questions are also designed to blur the lines of reality. Avoidants fear accountability because it forces them to confront their own emotional shortcomings. So rather than acknowledging the way they pulled away, shut down, or abandoned emotional responsibilities, they ask questions that shift the emotional burden back onto you. When they ask why things ended or why communication stopped, they are not genuinely seeking an explanation. They are creating a shared narrative in which both of you contributed equally to the disconnect. This erases the clarity you once had and replaces it with doubt. Doubt is emotionally destabilizing, and emotional instability makes you more susceptible to reopening the door. These questions also serve to soften your boundaries. If you have spent time healing, distancing yourself, or reclaiming your emotional power, these questions poke at the parts of you that still carry softness. They remind you of what you once felt, what you hoped for, and what you believed the connection could become. Avoidants unconsciously rely on these emotional traces to pull you back into a familiar pattern. They aren't trying to harm you, they are trying to soothe their own fear of disconnection while avoiding the vulnerability required to truly reconnect. In their mind, asking about the past keeps you orbiting around them without demanding anything concrete from them. It allows them to feel wanted without offering consistency. It allows them to feel connected without offering intimacy. It allows them to slip in and out of your emotional world without facing the consequences of their avoidance. Every question is designed to gently reopen the emotional space that once belonged to them. You begin to remember the tenderness, the chemistry, the potential, and in doing so, you risk forgetting the distance, the confusion, and the emotional deprivation that drove you away. And this is why these questions are manipulative, even if unconsciously. They awaken your emotional memory without offering emotional safety. They pull you back into vulnerability while the avoidant remains protected. They give the illusion of closeness while maintaining distance. They stir your heart to calm their fears. This is how avoidants reconnect, not by changing, but by revisiting the emotional doors they once left half open. When an avoidant asks questions that seem gentle, confused, or concerned, what often lies beneath is not love or clarity, but fear. Deep, instinctive fear that they do not fully understand about themselves. Avoidants do not operate from emotional safety. They operate from emotional protection. Every move they make in closeness is shaped by an internal conflict between wanting connection and fearing its consequences. Because of this, their questions often carry hidden intentions, hidden wounds, and hidden insecurities. These questions are rooted in the parts of themselves they cannot face: their fear of intimacy, their fear of losing control, and their fear of being seen too clearly. When they ask you something that feels emotional, they are not opening their heart. They are checking whether yours is still open enough for them to hide in. Avoidants fear intimacy because intimacy demands something they struggle with: the surrender of control. When someone gets too close, they begin to feel exposed, uncomfortable, and overwhelmed. This fear shapes the way they communicate. Instead of asking directly for reassurance, connection, or forgiveness, they use questions that appear thoughtful but actually protect their emotional armor. For example, when they ask if something hurt you, they might sound vulnerable, but what they are really trying to discover is how much emotional responsibility they are expected to carry. They want to know the damage without having to feel the weight of it. They fear being blamed, judged, or required to change. So the question becomes a shield, a way to gather information safely without opening themselves fully. Their fear of losing control plays an equally powerful role. Avoidants need to feel that they can regulate the emotional temperature of a relationship. They ask questions that help them understand where your mind and heart are positioned, because knowing this gives them a sense of emotional dominance without having to invest emotionally. If they sense you are healing, moving on, or becoming emotionally distant, they feel their control slipping. Instead of confronting this directly, they disguise their insecurity with questions that appear harmless. These questions are not meant to create connection, but to restore their sense of stability. They soothe their own anxiety by measuring how deeply you remain attached. Your answers help them manage their internal fear without requiring them to offer anything deeper in return. The fear of being seen is another force that shapes their behavior. Avoidants carry emotional wounds they rarely acknowledge: shame, inadequacy, experiences of abandonment, or expectations of rejection. When someone gets too close emotionally, these wounds rise to the surface. So instead of revealing themselves, avoidants direct the attention back to you. They use questions that make you explain your feelings, your reactions, your memories. This keeps the spotlight off their emotional shortcomings. It allows them to remain hidden, protected behind the shell they've built over many years. In a way, their questioning is an emotional diversion, keeping the focus on you so they never have to face the parts of themselves they fear. These hidden fears become the foundation of manipulative communication. The manipulation is rarely conscious or malicious. It is psychological self-defense. Asking questions becomes their way of controlling the emotional flow without appearing controlling. They create a dynamic where you feel responsible for maintaining the emotional connection. You become the one revealing, explaining, comforting, and understanding, while they remain guarded. This gives them emotional nourishment without requiring them to give any in return. Their questions pull you back into vulnerability at the exact moments they feel threatened by the possibility of losing emotional access to you. The thing that makes this manipulation so subtle is that the avoidant often believes they are simply seeking clarity. They don't realize that the fear behind their questions pushes them to create emotional imbalance. They ask just enough to keep you open, but not enough to become open themselves. Their internal world is ruled by a paradox. They want intimacy, but fear what intimacy demands. So they approach closeness sideways, through questions that create the illusion of connection while avoiding the reality of it. These questions tug at your empathy, triggering your desire to connect, explain, or repair the emotional distance. Meanwhile, the avoidance fears remain safely unchallenged. Ultimately, every question they ask from this place of fear is an attempt to manage their discomfort by placing emotional responsibility on you. Their hidden fears dictate their communication, shaping questions that reassure them without requiring transformation. And this is where so many people get trapped, responding to questions that appear heartfelt, not knowing that those questions are rooted in fears the avoidant has no intention of addressing. When an avoidant starts asking questions that create confusion rather than clarity, it is not random and it is not accidental. It is part of a deeper psychological pattern where distance feels safe and confusion becomes a tool, consciously or unconsciously, to maintain that distance. Avoidants don't handle emotional transparency well. Transparency requires honesty about their intentions, their fears, and their feelings, and this level of openness feels threatening. So instead of giving you direct answers or making their intentions clear, they speak in ways that keep you uncertain. Their questions are structured to open emotional doors without ever walking through them, to pull you close without offering closeness, and to re-engage you without committing to what that engagement might mean. Avoidants often fear that giving clarity will obligate them to take responsibility for the relationship. They worry that if they speak too plainly, they might be expected to change or to show emotional consistency, something they are internally terrified of. Confusion helps them avoid accountability. By asking vague, circular, or emotionally loaded questions, they shift the emotional responsibility onto you. You're the one who ends up explaining, interpreting, defining, and trying to understand what they truly meant. This dynamic allows them to remain in a safe middle space, visible enough to influence you, but distant enough to avoid being held responsible for the emotional consequences of their actions. Confusing questions also help them test your emotional temperature without exposing their own. Instead of saying, "I'm thinking about reconnecting," they ask, "Do you ever think about how things might have gone differently?" Instead of saying, "I miss you," they ask, "Do you ever feel like we left some things unresolved?" These questions sound reflective, but they are meant to make you reveal your emotional position first. They want to know how much softness is left in you, how much access they still have, how much power their absence or presence still holds. The confusion is a shield. It allows them to gather emotional information while giving away nothing of themselves. This is why avoidants frequently reach out at moments when they sense you pulling away. They feel the shift in your energy before you even say anything. Your silence, your distance, your new boundaries, they all register inside them as a loss of control. They don't want to lose access to you, but they also don't want to step fully into connection. So they ask questions that create just enough emotional stirring to pull you back into the dynamic. The questions are designed to make you think, to make you wonder, to make you emotionally engage again. Confusion becomes a reactivation tool. It reopens the emotional bond they fear losing while allowing them to stay in the comfort of emotional ambiguity. Another layer to this is how avoidants deal with internal conflict. They often experience conflicting desires, wanting closeness but fearing it, wanting reassurance but resisting responsibility, wanting significance but fearing vulnerability. Because of this contradiction, their communication often reflects their inner turmoil. Their questions mirror their internal confusion, but instead of processing that confusion internally, they externalize it onto you. They pull you into their emotional fog so they don't have to face it alone. You end up doing the emotional labor of decoding their feelings, soothing their anxiety, and offering clarity they themselves cannot generate. Confusion also helps avoidants preserve the fantasy of the relationship without facing the reality of it. They can keep the emotional door half open with questions that hint at possibility but never concretely define it. This allows them to hold on to the connection in a symbolic way without taking steps toward rebuilding it in a real way. They enjoy the emotional safety of knowing the bond still exists, while avoiding the discomfort of actually nurturing it. Confusing questions keep the connection suspended in a space where it cannot grow, but also cannot fully die. These questions are also strategic in how they affect you emotionally. When someone asks you something unclear or emotionally loaded, your mind naturally gravitates toward interpretation. You begin to wonder what they meant, what they feel, why they asked. This pulls you into the emotional maze they created, making you more vulnerable while they remain protected. Confusion weakens boundaries. It makes you second-guess your healing, your decisions, your independence. It can even make you question your memories and your sense of self. And in that emotional disorientation, the avoidant regains subtle power. This is why their questions often feel like emotional hooks rather than genuine attempts at connection. They are meant to cause movement in you, not in them. By keeping the conversation ambiguous, they maintain emotional control. They shape the dynamic without participating in it fully. And while they may not intend harm, the effect is the same. You are left carrying emotional weight that was never yours to hold, trying to find clarity in words that were never meant to illuminate anything at all. When an avoidant asks questions that seem innocent, gentle, or emotionally curious, what they are often doing beneath the surface is testing whether they still have emotional access to you. These questions rarely come from a place of genuine connection. They come from a place of uncertainty within themselves. Avoidants struggle to tolerate emotional closeness, but they also fear emotional abandonment. This creates a paradox where they want to keep you near enough to feel safe, but far enough to avoid the discomfort that intimacy brings. Every question they ask becomes a way to measure the strength of the invisible bond between you without having to openly admit they care. They want the reassurance of your attachment without taking on the responsibility of sustaining the relationship. Avoidants are highly sensitive to emotional cues, even if they appear detached. They can sense when your energy shifts, when your attention fades, or when your emotional world begins to move without them. This unsettles them because part of their internal stability comes from knowing they are still significant to you. Instead of expressing this directly, they ask questions that help them understand whether they remain emotionally important in your life. They might ask if you still think about them, if you miss what you had, or if you ever wonder what things could have been. These questions are not about reminiscing or healing. They are probes, meant to reveal how deeply you remain connected. The reason avoidants test emotional access is that it reassures them they have not lost control. Emotional control is essential to someone who fears vulnerability. If they know you still feel something for them, it eases their internal anxiety. It allows them to believe they could return if they ever wanted to, that they still exist in your emotional landscape. This sense of optionality is comforting. It gives them a feeling of emotional safety without requiring them to invest in closeness. They want to know the door is still open even if they have no immediate intention of walking through it. Emotional access becomes their way of maintaining a connection without committing to it. Their questions are also designed to keep the emotional dynamic unbalanced. If you reveal too much, your longing, your sadness, your attachment, they gain reassurance without giving anything of themselves. This allows them to stay emotionally distant while still benefiting from your vulnerability. They can feel desired, missed, or remembered without having to reciprocate. This dynamic protects their fear of intimacy while soothing their fear of losing significance. Your emotional openness becomes a cushion for their internal conflict. They get the security of knowing they matter without taking the risk of showing you the same. Avoidants also carry a deep fear of being forgotten. They might appear indifferent or self-contained, but underneath is an insecurity that they struggle to acknowledge. Losing emotional access to someone they once had a bond with feels like losing a part of their identity. They may not have fully shown up in the relationship, but they relied on your emotional presence more than you realized. It validated them. It made them feel valued. It gave them a sense of emotional grounding. So, when distance grows, they feel threatened, not because they want to rebuild, but because they fear becoming irrelevant to you. This is why their questions often come at strange moments, after long silence, after they've ignored your needs, or after they've pulled away without explanation. They return not with apologies or clarity, but with carefully crafted questions that open emotional doors just enough to see if you'll let them slip inside again. They are not looking for intimacy, they are looking for confirmation. They want to see whether your heart still bends in their direction. If it does, they feel safe. If it doesn't, they feel a loss of emotional power. Their questions also allow them to maintain emotional ambiguity. If they ask whether you still think about them or whether you ever miss what you had, they can interpret your answers in ways that suit their comfort. A small admission of softness from you becomes evidence that they still hold emotional influence. A neutral answer becomes an invitation for them to ask more. The questions aren't meant to discover your truth. They are meant to protect theirs. They need to know that even in their absence, even in their emotional inconsistency, they remain important. This is why emotional access matters so much to avoidants. It supports their defenses, stabilizes their insecurities, and preserves the illusion that connection remains available without requiring effort. They don't have to commit, grow, or change. They only need to confirm that you are still emotionally open. These questions are not signs of emotional growth. They are signs of emotional caution, driven by a deep need to be significant without becoming vulnerable.